Hello everyone. I wanted to remake the intro because the original intro was a little bit schizo.
Like cringe TikTok girl saying, "Oh my god, my autism."
No, I am insane. And I feel like that would throw off any new viewers. If you wouldn't mind, liking and commenting this video if you do enjoy it. But this video basically covers over or just about 100 mental health key terms and whatnot. We start off simple with ADHD and anxiety disorders. Then we move on to the rare and somewhat creepy mental disorders such as Cotard syndrome and walking corpse syndrome. What I'm going over is a mental health and grand illusions iceberg. And basically in this video, I go over each and every term. I explain it briefly. And there's a little gateway segment for each thing, so it can be broken down. I should have timestamps as well throughout the entire video. Oh my god, he's shirtless. Anyways, just a quick disclaimer here. I will be using photos of real dead bodies. I will be blurring them and trying to censor for the most part. If you are squeamish or don't like looking at this stuff, I will put a little schizo warning thing before we dive into such cases like that. This won't come into play though until Capgras delusion and everything so on forth, because these type of disorders often lead to either the parent killing the spouse, or the spouse killing the parent, or some random dude killing someone over thinking that they're a demon or that they're out to get them. I wanted to cover these topics because I think people should know more about this, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. Since my channel is already technically blacklisted, what's the worst that could happen? You know, I'm here to educate my audience on this type of stuff because I think this is stuff that people should learn about, and it's stuff that goes on in your society that most people don't know about. So the whole point of this video is basically to educate you on it, or whoever might be interested in this type of stuff. It's a little quirky at the start, you know. I'm kind of making memes or Facebook mom level of memes for most of the stuff, but towards the lateral half of the video it starts getting more serious. So if you're into that type of stuff, keep watching. If you're not, no harm in clicking off. Just a disclaimer. And that being said, let's get into this. So as you can tell from our first topic, the title card, we're going over ADHD. This is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So ADHD, it's a neurodevelopment condition that affects focus, impulse control, and activity levels. It was first described in the early 20th century as minimal brain dysfunction. It was later refined into a more modern definition found in the DSM-15. People with ADHD, they often find it difficult to sustain attention on tasks that don't engage them, but can, hyper-focus on other things. For example, a kid, when he's learning math or something, he'll be staring out the window at like a bug flying around or a bird flying, something like that. Some symptoms are inattention, impulsivity, hyperactivity. These can manifest as forgetfulness, restlessness, or any thing that can be defined as a difficulty of staying organized. So ADHD people typically tend to be kind of messy, kind of sloppy. ADHD is often confused with simple distractibility or laziness, but it's more of a rooted brain cause than just someone being, fat and lazy. And then unlike anxiety or depression, which we'll be later, or we'll be covering after, ADHD is primarily more about attention regulation and impulse control rather than the brain's overall mood or feelings. Our next topic is depression. Depression is a mood disorder that causes persistent sadness, hopelessness, or total loss of interest in, everyday extracurricular activities. It has been recognized for centuries. It was once called melancholy by ancient physicians back then. An example of this is a person might feel unable to get out of bed or find joy in things that they once did if they develop depression. There's also seasonal depression and mood swing depression that we will be covering later on. Symptoms of depression are low energy, poor concentration, changes in appetite or sleep, and thoughts of worthlessness, one not finding value in oneself. And depression differs from temporary sadness or grief because it persists in one's everyday life. There's not really like a change. Like people with depression, they're not going to randomly feel better. It's more of a gradual process that one has to mentally overcome, or they can physically overcome with medication, but it just stalls the problem. I don't think it ever very cures the problem. I think it would just numb it down. topic is anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders are among the most common mental health conditions. It's marked by excessive fear, worry, or nervousness that interferes with daily life. While anxiety itself is a normal emotion, clinical anxiety is disappropriate and persistent. An example of this would be, someone might feel overwhelming panic in like short bursts, or long, gradual bursts from either having to do a task or being out in public, or, just having to do really anything that might trigger that in the brain that, causes that emotion to start taking place. Some symptoms of anxiety disorder: restlessness, not being able to sit still, muscle tensions, muscle spasms, irritability. These people might be quick to anger. These people will have a difficult time concentrating. They might not be able to sleep as good as, your average Joe. May even have panic attacks in more extreme occurrences. And then unlike depression, anxiety, which centers on mood. Unlike depression, which is more mood-based, anxiety focuses on fear and anticipation. It also differs from phobias, which are tied to specific objects or situations rather than generalized, worrying. Next, we have bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder involves extreme mood swings between depression and mania. It was first clinically described in the 19th century as a manic depressive illness. An example of this is a person might go through a week of boundless energy, talking rapidly, taking risks and whatnot, and then either like a couple hours after or like the next week after, they'll just be in a depressive, slow state. They won't want to do anything. They'll basically be tired from their mania actions a week or a day prior. Some symptoms include elevated mood, an inflated self-esteem, a reduced need for sleep. They might be full of energy and whatnot. Very impulsive behavior, depressive episodes that can mirror like classic depression or a seasonal depression type of disorder. Next, we have phobias. A phobia is an intense irrational fear of a specific object, activity, or situation. This can stem from either childhood trauma, or it can just be developed in the brain that they're born with, or it can even develop later on. We have 3 innate fears as people, or three phobias: the fear of height, I believe the fear of darkness, and then the fear of anything that looks remotely human. The third one kind of being creepy in its own nature, but back then it was realistic when there was different species of people. And phobia has been around, since the dawn of mankind. Hell, it was even around back in Greek times. Socrates even, mentions it in his play. So some symptoms of phobias include sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeats, basically a miniature panic attack if that person is near anything that is associated with their phobia. That's an extreme case. Some people with normal phobias, though, they kind of, they thug it out. Avoidance to these events or situations is common with someone with a phobia. So if they have like a social based phobia where they don't like interacting with people, they'll tend to keep to themselves. They'll tend to want to stay in more than going out. They'll be more of an introverted type of person compared to like someone else.
The worst part of having a child with autism.
Next, we have autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Autism is a developmental condition that affects communication, sensory processing, and social interactions. It was first recognized in the early 1940s by Leo Kanner. It's now understood as a broad spectrum of traits and abilities. Before, it was just this person acts kind of weird. They have autism. Now it's more so it can be broadly defined with different sections of autism. Some people believe it's a chemical weapon that was produced by the government. I'm not going to go into schizo theories here. We're going to try and stay more medically sound. So an example of autism is, if you didn't see from the title card already, a child that acts disproportionate, abnormal. They're very irritable. They'll start screaming, making bird noises, and they'll, try and hit the cameraman. And, symptoms of this is they have a difference in social understanding. They don't really understand complex social situations. If you talk to them in a certain way, like if you be sarcastic, they're not going to understand it. They're going to think you're being rude to them, even though you're trying to make a joke. And I hate this when I'm sarcastic a lot. And I don't know now, but a lot of people back then on my Siege videos had the Tism because that game is just, you know, riled with them. They're infested in that game like cockroaches, so they never would get my jokes. It was terrible. You know, they have focused interests. They're going to care about one thing over the other. They're not going to care to really branch out, learn a whole broad variety. And they also have repetitive behaviors. They'll keep doing the same thing over and over. Their schedule will be very time menial, which means that they'll follow the clock. During the day, they'll have certain repeating behaviors that mostly line up accurately for the most time. And autism isn't a mental illness. I just want to state it's more of a neurodevelopmental difference. You know, you're born with it, you don't develop it over time. All the quirky girls on TikTok saying they have the Tism, they're just doing it for views. My fellow autistic manlet bros out there, do not be persuaded by the harlots. Social anxiety disorder, which was formerly known as a social phobia, is a chronic fear of being judged, embarrassed, or humiliated in a social setting. An example of this is someone, you know, as earlier talked about with the phobia, I said the social phobia. It's someone who, you know, might want to skip a presentation or parties out of intense fear of being, you know, judged or scrutinized while they participate. Symptoms of social anxiety disorder often are blushing, trembling, nausea, sweating, and avoidance of said social interaction. People often feel on stage constantly. This isn't to be confused with Truman syndrome, which we'll be covering way later on in the video. And social anxiety, it's distinct from general anxiety because the fear is specifically tied to that social judgment setting. It also differs from introversion, which is a personality trait, not a disorder. Dyslexia is a learning difference that affects reading and language processing. It was first recognized in the late 19th century, around the 1970s. It's a neurological rather than linked to intelligence or effort. An example is someone who has a hard time reading, whether that's numbers or words. The words will tend to change for them and they won't be able to understand it. A simple sentence to someone with dyslexia might look like a jumble of words that, you know, don't really mean anything. Some symptoms of dyslexia: a person will often have a difficulty time decoding written books, spelling problems, and they'll, you know, overall just be a slower reading, or they'll have a slower reading fluency because, you know, the words are quite literally spinning and changing for them. So of course they're gonna have a hard time reading it. And dyslexia is distinct from ADHD or any general learning difficulties because it specifically affects reading-related neural pathways in the brain. And it's not an overall attention or cognition, if that makes sense. Next, we're moving on to the second tier of the iceberg, so buckle in. We're slowly going down to the good stuff. Our next topic is schizophrenia. This one's kind of based. Schizophrenia is a severe psychiatric disorder that alters how a person perceives reality. It often involves hallucinations, delusions, and a disorganized thought process. It was first described in detail by Eugene Boullier in 1911. It remains one of the most misunderstood mental illnesses to this day. It's kind of memed on a lot as well. You know, the soy jack normie versus the schizophrenic Chad, and it's like an image of like the Chad dude. He's got like a bunch of spiders and bugs all around him. It's funny. An example: schizophrenia is a person might hear voices or grand delusions or whatnot on their actions, or believe that strangers are sending them, you know, secret messages through television broadcasts, something far-fetched like that. Symptoms often include hallucinations, delusions, incoherent speech, a flat effect, if that makes sense. Everything will appear flat and not like if you cover one eye and you try to like tell the distance, that's basically what that is. And also cognitive disabilities. And unlike mood disorders, schizophrenia primarily distorts perception and thought. It's different from a dissociative disorder, which involves identity fragmentation rather than a psychosis. You can be born with schizophrenia. You can also develop it over time through brain trauma, or just something goes wrong in your brain and, you know, you're now a schizo, you know?
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the will start.
Our next topic is panic disorder. Panic disorders involve panic attacks, sudden urges of intense fear that peak within one's own mind within minutes or seconds. It was first classified in the late 20th century, around, I believe, 2002, 2003, as a distinct gateway from general anxiety. An example of a panic disorder is someone might experience a racing heartbeat and shortness of breath and be convinced that they're dying even though nothing threatening is happening. Or they might just have like an innate fear of any, situation or setting, which can be confused with phobias, and phobias can tie into a panic disorder. Symptoms are heart palpitations, trembling, dizziness, chest pain, and fear of losing control with one's own mind or self. Basically a mental state of just spinning and dizziness. Next we have OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. OCD causes unwanted thoughts, obsessions, and repetitive behaviors or rituals aimed at reducing one's overall anxiety. It's been recognized for centuries, once called scrupulosity. A person may feel, compelled to wash their hands dozens of times to prevent imagined contamination. Like the germaphobe people, that is a strain of OCD. Extreme situation, someone wears like a little hazmat suit or something, and they constantly wash their hands because they think that the germs are out to get them, that they're gonna like hurt them in some way, shape, or form. Or OCD can also just be like a ritual, or seeing objects that are misaligned and having to align them because it will start triggering something in that person's brain that causes anxiety or a heightened state of panic or just discomfort. Symptoms are obsessions and, compulsions, checking, cleaning, counting, whatnot. And OCD differs from anxiety disorders in that distress stems from intrusive thoughts followed by ritualistic actions, not general worry of a person, place, or thing. Next we have Seasonal Affective Disorder, SAD. Beautiful acronym, by the way. Not to glaze. Is a form of depression triggered by seasonal changes, most often during winter months when sunlight is scarce. It was formally identified in the early 1980s, around 1982, 1983. An example of seasonal affective disorder is someone might feel sluggish, they might oversleep, and overall just withdraw socially every winter or every 3 winter months, and then they'll feel normal again in spring or in summer. Symptoms include fatigue, excessive sleep, carbohydrate craving, which is people who really need bread. It's a weird link between seasonal affective disorder and people who go out of their way to eat a lot of carbs during these times, and a low mood in a seasonal pattern. And how it differs is SAD follows a predictable season pattern, unlike major depression, which can occur any time of the year.
Hey, are you fat or pregnant? I'm a man.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. PTSD develops after experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event such as war, assault, or disaster. It was first recognized in soldiers as shell shock. An example of this is a car accident survivor might have an innate fear of automotive anything, an automotive-based phobia. They won't want to drive, they won't want to be near a car because they've had a bad relation with that, object or thing in the past. And this can stem from childhood. This can stem really from any traumatic event that happens in this person's life. Some symptoms of PTSD are intrusive memories, hypervigilance, nightmares, emotional numbness, and avoidance from places, objects, persons, or things. Next one is postpartum depression. This is more so for the woman. In the chat, any mothers, there's definitely none in my audience. I checked. It's a sausage party up in here with the 7 of us. And basically what postpartum depression is it's a mood disorder, and it occurs after childbirth, involving extreme sadness, exhaustion, and anxiety that interfere with the maternal functions that a woman experiences after giving birth to a baby. And this has been documented as early as the 4th century BC, and it's now understood as relating to hormonal imbalances and emotional changes that are caused by this. An example of postpartum depression is a new mother may feel detached from her baby or fear she's an unfit parent despite wanting to care for said child. Symptoms include persistent sadness, crying spells, guilt, irritability, and overall withdrawal from caring for the child.
Oh, I need a drink.
Next we have alcohol use disorder, alcoholism. This one's kind of based. Any of my fellow booze cruisers out there, alright? Booze cruising's okay unless you booze crash, then that's not okay, not cool, dude. And what alcoholism is it's a chronic disease characterized by compulsive drinking, loss of control, and a negative emotional state when they're not drinking. An example of this is a person might promise to stop drinking but repeatedly relapse, drinking secretly or early in the day. And this eventually leads to their overall demise because they will get kidney failure and whatnot from drinking. Unless they're one tough son of a gun, then they'll keep drinking until they're old. You know, these people usually, you know, reek, or they'll be crabby, and they won't be pleasant to be around for the most part. Symptoms are cravings, tolerance, withdrawal, and continued use despite the overall harm of constant alcohol. And unlike casual drinking or abuse, alcoholism involves physical dependence and long-term neuroadaptation. If these people don't drink, the brain will quite literally start damaging itself.
I cannot sleep, I cannot dream tonight.
Next, we have insomnia, and insomnia is a persistent difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, which is not explained by lifestyle or environmentals alone. So anyone who scrolls TikTok for 5 hours and they're like,
Oh my god, I have insomnia. Oh my god.
no, you probably have autism or something. I'm going to be real with you. Insomnia is for the real chads who basically they can lie awake for hours every night with no phone, no electricity, no sound in the room, and they will just close their eyes for a good 5 hours and they still won't be able to fall asleep. And it drives you insane. Insomnia has been around since ancient medieval times, because even ancient medical texts already describe sleepiness as a malady of the mind, and symptoms include fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating, and poor sleep quality. Also eye blurriness and whatnot, eye discomfort, because you know you're not going to be sleeping. And how it differs is insomnia differs from sleep deprivation caused by choice or schedule. It's a disorder or a disrupted sleep regulation. Next, we have Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, it's a degenerative brain disorder that causes memory loss, a cognitive decline, and personality changes in that person. It was first described by Alois Alzheimer in 1906. It's the most common form of dementia. So an example of this is a person may forget recent conversations, get lost in familiar places, or fail to recognize loved ones if they have Alzheimer's disease. Symptoms include memory impairment, confusion, language difficulties, and an eventual loss of independence. Someone with Alzheimer's disease eventually will not be able to care for themselves. That's why we have nurses and care homes and whatnot for the elderly that you know you don't want to care for, because you know they stink. So just go dump them on someone else. And how it differs from dementia is it's a specific pattern of brain plaque buildup, and it's a gradual decline, not a sudden onset. Alzheimer's disease, it's gradual, while dementia is just instant. Okay, we're going to move on to the mid-layer here. First, we have Tourette syndrome. Now, this can be described as a disorder characterized by repetitive, involuntary movements and vocalization called tics. Some symptoms include motor tics, which can be defined as eye blinking, shoulder shrugging, vocal tics, grunting, throat clearing, and sometimes excessive compulsive behaviors or ADHD-based movability. Now, the histories and origins of Tourette syndrome was first described by Dr. George Gillius de la Tourette in 1885, aka Mr. Tourette's himself. Research has since then identified genetic and neurological contributions to the field of Tourette's. An example of Tourette's would basically be a child who's like spazzing out. The We Love Fortnite children, you know, that could be a sign of Tourette's, maybe. Next one is psychosis. Psychosis is a mental state involving impairment in reality testing and perception. It's often seen in schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or even in some cases, severe depression. Symptoms include hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking, and emotional dysregulation. The history of this is it was first documented in ancient texts, and then modern psychiatry formalized the term in the early 19th century, around the 1920s, 1930s. An example of this would be a person believes they are being monitored by the government and hears voices giving them instructions, or someone who believes there's a lot of fish people outside of their door.
I'm beginning to hear a lot of fishmen right outside my door.
The numbers! What are they saying?
You can't keep getting away with it!
Next, we have Schizoaffective Disorder. This is a psychiatric condition combining symptoms of schizophrenia and mood disorders. Some symptoms include delusions, hallucinations, mania or depression, and emotionally instability. The history and origins of this, it was first identified in the late 1930s, 1937 to be exact, and research focuses on distinguishing it from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. An example of this would be someone experiences hallucinations while also cycling through a depressive episode. So these hallucinations can also change and vary based on that person's mood. And if this person has mood swings, let's say anger, then the hallucinations would be more violent and more, shall we say, jump scarish, like, ooh, towards this person who has schizoaffective disorders. Next one is Borderline Personality Disorder, BPD for short. Description of this is a personality disorder characterized by instability in relationships, self-image, and emotion. Some symptoms include emotional dysregulation, fear of abandonment, impulsive behavior, and even in some extreme cases, self-harm. Brief history of this was it was first described in the 1930s. An example of this would be an individual alternating between idolizing and devaluing friends and partners. So a person, borderline personality disorder, they could be like, ooh, this guy is great. He's my best friend. I'd take a bullet for him. And then like a day later or even an hour later, they'd be like, I hate this dude. He's the scum of the earth. Our next one is Bulimia Nervosa. And this is an eating disorder characterized by binge eating, followed by compensatory behaviors, followed by compository behaviors. This can include recurrent binge purge cycles in which a person eats a lot during an allotted amount of time on a specific day throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. This was first clinically described in the 1970s. Research links genetic, psychological, and social economical factors to this, so this can be a whole wide thing. I'm mostly focusing on the mental state, or it's someone who is either born with it or they develop it over time, where they're like, I need to eat, I need to be fat. An example of this would be like a fat person, your average Walmart shopper, and they'd be grabbing 7 liters of Diet Coke off the shelf, and then maybe they'll treat themselves to a 12 frozen cheese pizzas. Who really knows? Next, we have Anorexia Nervosa. And this is yet again another eating disorder involving extreme food restriction and intense fear of weight gain. This is the complete polar opposite of Bulimia Nervosa, which I just covered. And the symptoms of this include weight loss. This is similar to anorexia, by the way. Distorted body image, obsessive calorie count. And this was first described in the late 19th century. Modern psychiatry recognizes both psychological and biological factors. An example of this could be someone who, if you've ever heard the coined term almond mom on TikTok, if you look that up, very skinny old people or people in their 30s and 40s who think if they eat more than an orange slice a day, they're going to magically put on 400 pounds. These people literally look like walking Minecraft skeletons. They'd be looking like Fallout ghouls. Next, we have gender dysphoria, and this is distress due to a mismatch between one's assigned gender at birth and experienced gender identity. This is kind of similar to trans personality disorder. Not trying to be transphobic or hate on those type of people. Symptoms include a strong desire to be another gender, discomfort with sexual characteristics, depression or anxiety. They don't feel comfortable in their body. An example of this could be a dude who thinks he's a girl, or a girl who thinks she is a man. Our modern day society has become a lot more accepting of this, but it wasn't the same back then in the earlier 19th century. Where those people would either, if they weren't, doing it as a joke, then they would be discriminalized and they'd be put into institutions and whatnot. Next, we have hypochondria illness, anxiety disorder, and what this is it's an excessive preoccupation with having a serious illness despite being medically reassured that you don't have it. So symptoms include persistent health anxiety, checking behaviors, frequent doctor visits, distress. Basically, this person thinks that they have something in which they don't, even though they've been reassured, plenty of times by, the trusted doctor or something. They still think that they have it. This was documented since the 18th century, in which, people would think that they have the Black Plague, or they have like hysteria or something, and the physicians at the time back then, they'd be like, no, good sir, you don't have that. And they'd be like, no, God is punishing me. I have this. I have the Black Plague. My hands are falling off. Look. You know, and their hands wouldn't be falling off. So then the dude, he'd have to like mog on them until they left. Moving on to binge eating disorder here. This is an eating disorder involving recurring episodes of excessive food consumption without behaviors limiting it. And this is the same thing almost as bulimia nervosa. It's very similar here. People who, you know, eat rapidly, eating when not hungry, guilt or shame afterward, obesity risk. It's basically the same thing as, you know, bulimia nervosa. So we're just going to move past that one. They're two of the same. It's the same sides of one coin.
Beauty! Oh, title thing.
Next, we have narcolepsy here, and this is a neurological disorder affecting sleep-wake cycles. Some symptoms include excessive daytime sleepiness, sudden sleep attacks, cataplexy, which is a muscle weakness triggered by emotion, and sleep paralysis. This was first described in the 1880s. Specifically in France, it was linked to a hypocretin deficiency in the brain, which is a certain protein in the brain. If it doesn't produce enough, then you're not going to sleep. Melatonin can solve this. Not permanently, though. It does help it, though. Basically, what narcolepsy is it is just someone who just blinks out. Like, they'll just fall asleep without warning, or they might have a small warning of, you know, like, my body feels like it's going numb. I gotta sit down. I don't think these people are allowed to have a driver's license or to be able to operate any, you know, heavy machinery, because, you know, they can just fall asleep at a moment's notice. Moving on to Pica here, and Pica is a disorder characterized by the persistent eating of non-nutritive or non-food-based substances, and this can include eating dirt, paper, hair, plastics. You know, like, you know, that if someone eats a TV remote, that can be, you know, maybe a small sign of Pica, and usually it develops as an adolescent if the child is not getting enough of the mother's big boobas. What am I saying, bro? Then that child will still be hungry and they'll start to gnaw on stuff like their fingernails, their pacifier, or any other things that they can get a hold of, the plastics and like the baby toys and whatnot, and they will start eating it because they're still hungry, and then it will develop still. Like, you don't get rid of Pica. If you have Pica as a kid, you're gonna have it as an adult. So as an adult, you know, you'd be eating TV remotes, random other crap, and just kind of out of a bad habit or just binge eating. You're not gonna, you know, be like, oh my god, a battery, you know. It's not like that, but as a child it would be. But adults with Pica, I'm assuming they're a little bit more smarter than that. Next, we have imposter syndrome. This can be described as a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and fear being exposed as a fraud. It can include anxiety, perfectionism, low self-esteem, fear of evaluation. And this was first identified in the 1970s by a psychologist named Pauline Clance, and another one called Susan Imes. I believe both of these are women. And an example of this would be a high-achieving professional believing their success is luck and fear. So an example of this would be like someone who, I don't know, they just found the cure for cancer or something, and then they'd be scared of people finding out that it was only luck that, you know, let them do that, even though luck wasn't involved and they did it scientifically, they did it by the book and whatnot. So yeah, imposter syndrome, it's kind of a form of self-sabotage when you achieve something, and people with imposter syndrome tend to not want to achieve anything. They'll have lack of motivation and whatnot because they don't want this fear to arise, this subconscious fear of what they're doing. They're actually cheating, but they're not cheating, if that makes sense. Next, we have PMDD, which is a premenstrual dysmorphic disorder, and I believe this is only found in women. And what the description is it's a severe premenstrual emotion and physical symptoms interfering with daily functions. Some symptoms can include irritability, depression, anxiety, mood swings, fatigue, and sleep disturbance. And basically what this is it focuses on the hormonal fluctuations and the neurotransmission sensitivity of the brain of a female. So yeah, I don't think men can get this. And an example of this would be a girl experiencing, you know, intense mood swings and irritability 1 week before she would get her period.
all your bridges.
Next we have Antisocial Personality Disorder, ASPD for short. And what this is it's a personality disorder marked by a disregard for others' rights and social norms. Some symptoms include deceitfulness, impulsivity, aggression, lack of remorse, criminal behavior. In the history of this, it was a link to psychopathy in the early 20th century. However, it has been studied as early as the 1980s. And an example of this would be a person who repeatedly lies, cheats, or manipulates others without guilt to get a personal gain in the world or something, like a car salesman. If you've ever seen the movie Matilda, Matilda's dad, Danny DeVito, who plays that character, he can basically be showing signs of ASPD because he'll sell these broken vehicles that don't work for like 10 times the price. And as he famously says in the movie, he doesn't care what happens as long as a car is off the lot by the time that happens, so he's no longer at fault. That is a good example of ASPD. Our final thing of this bracket before we go even lower is selective mutism. Selective mutism can be described as anxiety disorders where a person is unable to speak in certain social situations despite speaking normally in others. This can include silence in school or a school setting, fear of speaking, social anxiety, or withdrawal. This has become more popular in the early 20th century. And an example of this would be a child that speaks frequently at home where he feels comfortable, but he will not utter a word at school. These people tend to avoid, unfamiliar social settings. They won't want to get into public speaking. They don't want to present anything that they have done, whether that's an academic or personal setting. Next, we have oppositional defiant disorder.
I'm a bad boy.
Which is ODD for short. And what it is it is a behavioral disorder primarily affecting children and adolescents. It can be characterized by a persistent pattern of angry, irritable, argumentative, or even vindictive behavior towards authority figures. Some examples of this: ACOG or ACAB, all cops are bastards, anarchists. Symptoms include frequent temper tantrums, arguing with adults, refusal to comply with rules or societal norms, deliberately annoying others, blaming others for mistakes. Emotional dysregulation is common. This is like your typical rage baiter. In the history and origins of this, it was recognized in psychiatry back in the late 1980s. Research on it emphasizes familial and environmental factors being the root causes of it. If you don't have a father figure, if your parents are anything but parents.
I'm naked with my kids. I have sex in front of my kids. That's how I get down around kids. I try to keep their purity. I don't want to take their purity away by covering myself up. No, I'm going to be naked in front of your kids. My son comes up and grabs my penis. I let him grab my penis. After I'm done, I'm laying there chilling. He grabbed my penis and he's playing with my penis. I let that happen.
This is Joe Biden. Black Lives Matter.
Another example being like a young child who repeatedly defies, what the teacher's instructions were and, argues with their parents daily or weekly, something like that. That can be a sign of ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. Next, we have narcissistic personality disorder, NPD for short. NPD is a personality-based disorder involving a persuasive pattern of grandiosity needed for administration and a lack of empathy for others. This can mean an exaggerated self-importance, kind of like a god complex, preoccupation with fantasies of success or power, manipulative-based behavior, emotional dysregulation, hypersensitivity to criticism, people who cannot take criticism. Your average champ on Siege, your average Siege TikTok streamer, when you say, "Are you M&K?" and they give you a death threat and then ban you from their Twitch chat. It's happened to me. These people suffer from this narcissistic personality disorder. And the history of this was a theory by, Mr. Freaky Fruit himself. Back in the early 19th century, and it's a very distinct personality disorder. These people, they seek praise and they don't care how many people have to get hurt, how many eggs have to break to make said metaphysical omelet. Next we have DID, dissociative identity disorder. DID is a complex disorder marked by the presence of 2 or more distinct identity states within that single individual. It's often as a response to severe trauma. Symptoms include amnesia, identity fragmentation, distinct behavioral states, altered perception of self and mind, and an emotional dysregulation. And the early case of this, or the one that's mostly been studied, is the one from 1994, where multiple people had personality disorders that were linked to childhood trauma and severe stress, and they would basically swap personalities. Like for example, something bad can happen during one's childhood period, and they split into 2 people. This one mirror of self, where they're like strong and they're not afraid of anything and they're a brute. And the other side could be like the true reflection of the soul or the self, and they're timid, they're fearful, they maybe have some phobia or even PTSD in some cases related to, said event that triggered this overall dissociative identity disorder.
Today's subject is slavery.
Next we have body dysmorphic disorder, BDD. BDD is a mental health disorder where an individual obsessively focuses on their own perceived defects or flaws in their physical appearance. Symptoms include compulsive checking in mirrors, excessive grooming, avoidance of social situations, emotional distress. These people would rather stay home and clean themselves for the 10th millionth time because they think they're still dirty or that they smell, but they're trying to build this perceived self-image that they have no flaws, that they look like the Sigma filter on TikTok or Instagram Reels, the one that makes your jawline chiseled. Next we have trichotillomania. I'm probably butchering that. And what this is the disorder characterized by recurrent irresistible urges to pull out one's hair. These people want to go bald, and this is mostly related to distress. And, symptoms include, hair pulling from scalp, if that wasn't obvious. Eyebrows or eyelashes, emotional dysregulations, compulsive or ritualistic behavior. So someone who has this might like pull out their hair at a certain time of a certain day, and this could, maybe relieve their overall anxiety that they have, or their emotional disorder that might be building up. Like if they don't rip out their hair, something bad could happen to this person. This could be something that they are thinking. There's a whole wide variety of why people may develop this. You're not born with this. This is a cognitive disorder that you do develop, or you do have a chance of developing from a trauma or other harmful stimulus.
Nobody move! Sherman, I've got to get you out of here before you touch yourself.
Next we have agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is an anxiety-based disorder where an individual fears or avoids places or situations where escape might be difficult, often leading to home confinement. Related to claustrophobia in that sense, symptoms include panic attacks, avoidance of crowded or open places, anxiety based on anticipation, emotional dysregulation, and it's recognized as a distinct disorder. And it was first generally broadly recognized in the 1980s. And it is historically linked and associated with panic-based disorders. An example would be an adult unable to leave home for work or a social event due to fear of them experiencing a panic attack or something bad happening to this person, and they're not able to escape because they're boxed and crowded. They don't see people as people, they see them more as a walking wall, that they can't go under or over, and they're going to get boxed in, and then something bad might happen. Next, we have complexive PTSD, CPTSD, and what CPTSD is it is a condition resulting from a prolonged or repeated trauma leading to emotional dysregulation, relationship-based difficulties, and negative self-perception. Symptoms include intrusive memories, hypervigilance of one's place of surroundings, emotional dysregulation. This can be related to BPD, bipolar disorder, avoidance of anything social, interpersonal difficulties, meaning that they are not good to socialize with, or it's hard for them to talk to people, I guess, because they're anxious about it, they're nervous. They have PTSD of events that aren't going to happen or haven't happened yet in their mind, based on events that were trauma-inducing that they suffered at an earlier age or early on period in their life. An example could be a survivor of a chronic childhood abuse, you know, struggling with trust, or getting over their fear of people. Like if they grew up in we'll say a drug-induced family, you know, where they were abused or something, this child or this, you know, now adult would or has a chance of developing complex PTSD, where they don't want to, you know, socialize with anyone because they have a fear that those people are going to do what their parents did to them when they were young and abuse them and whatnot. So they will go out of their way to avoid social commentary, social contact, you know, basically anything relating to the outside world. Next we have dysgraphia, and I probably butchered that one as well, so we'll just go with dysgraphia. And it is a learning disability affecting written expression, including handwriting, spelling, and organized written thoughts. I suffer from this one. This is one I got, man. This one, you don't gotta guess on this one. I got this one. Where is my writing? My room is a mess. Look at this writing. Look at this writing. Suicide, insane. Alright. Anyways, what this is, if you couldn't tell from, you know, my image or what I showed on camera, it is just poor handwriting, inconsistent spacing, difficulty organizing sentences, frustration, emotional dysregulation related to writing. I don't suffer from anything relating to that. It was first described in neuropsychological literature in the late 19th century. It was recognized beforehand, but that's when it became more broad and more popular. And it was recently brought up again back in 2013.
Exploding head syndrome. Right as you're falling asleep, boom, you hear.
Next we have exploding head syndrome, EHS for short. EHS is a parasomnia involving sudden, loud, imagined noises or sensations of explosion during sleep onset or awakening, you know, while you're sleeping or as soon as you awake. You're gonna hear this loud booming, and you're like a cannon just went off next to you, like you're on the deck of like a naval ship or something, and you know, man the cannons, ding 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 ding, and it's. But yeah, symptoms include auditory hallucinations during, you know, sleep transitions, sudden fright or brief physical jerks, anxiety, loud deafening booms that will, you know, actually make their ears ring even though nothing loud went off. It's more of a brain playing a trick. It was first described in the 19th century. It was related to shell shock back then, and then it was formally renamed in the 1980s, and it is considered benign but distressing.
The numbers! What are they saying?
Next we have dyscalculia. Oh, good goodness. Yeah. And the word's on screen. Anyways, what that is it is a specific learning disability affecting mathematical abilities, including number-based calculations and reasoning. So what is 9 plus 10, good sir? And they'll be like 19. What if they have dyscalculia? They'll be like 21, you know, and then you'll look at them, you'll be like, damn, you stupid. There's not much that I can find on that. I tried Googling and whatnot, so that one's kind of iffy. So we're just gonna move on. Next we have pyromania. This one is quite popular. Well, not the case, but the overall word of it and whatnot, and you know, modern media and literature and whatnot. And pyromania it's an impulsive control disorder characterized by an uncontrollable urge to deliberately start a fire. It is not motivated by financial gain, revenge, or political reasons, but just by the tension that builds up in one's mind who may have pyromania, and setting something on blaze reduces that anxiety, reduces that buildup, that metaphorical, you know, blockage. They have like a bunch of pressure building their head might explode, so they need to light something on fire. That's what these people suffer from. Symptoms include, you know, repeated deliberate fire setting, fascination with fire, emotional tension before the act, relief of pleasure after the act, compulsive behavior, and emotional dysregulation. This was first formally described in the 19th century in psychiatric based literature. It was recognized in DSM-5, if anyone knows what that is, as an impulse control disorder. More recently, though, 1990s, research has explored neurobiological and behavior underpinnings meaning that this could be a family-based trait. If your father or your grandfather was an arsonist, you have a 5% marginal error-based chance of also being an arsonist before they even reflect that back onto you. Like, you can be born with the need to light something on fire. Next, we have avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, ARFID. This mostly affects children, like toddlers, infants, and whatnot. It's an eating disorder involving restrictive food intake, as you can guess from the name. It's not related to body image, leading to nutritional deficiencies, weight loss, or psychological impairment. And what it is it's an avoidance of certain foods due to sensory sensitivities or fear of choking on them, a lack of interest in eating, emotional distress around meals, or compulsive or ritualistic eating behaviors. If a child does not like eating broccoli because the color of it, or better example here, if a child doesn't like eating vegetables because he associates them with something bad or something, or he just won't eat in general if any vegetables are near his plate or have been near the food, or like a child who refuses to eat foods of certain textures, leading to significant weight loss and malnutrition. In extreme cases, the child will actually need to be taken to the hospital, and they'll need to like pump his stomach, or force feed him, so he doesn't, or he or she doesn't die off from being like, oh, I'm not gonna eat, I'm too cool for that. They'll be like, oh, no, you get in the tube.
I know you stole that spoon. You're a thief.
Next, we have kleptomania. Kleptomania is an impulse control disorder characterized by recurrent failure to resist urges to steal items, typically of little value, without personal need or gain. A good example of this is in Breaking Bad, Hank Schrader's wife, whatever the hell her name is. When she goes to these open houses, she like steals the fork, she steals other stuff. She stole like some random family photo, that is what kleptomania is. It's compulsive stealing, tension before theft, relief or gratification afterwards, emotional dysregulation, and just an overall impaired social or occupational functioning. These people, they don't really fit in, nor to say, it's not like glaring. It's not like, like a engorged thumb on a hand. It's more so, they're not normal, and you can kind of tell, but it's not like glaringly obvious. And research still examines links to serotonin dysregulation and compulsive behaviors as the main cause of this. So people who aren't happy with their life, they start stealing minuscule stuff, and it makes them happy, and they're like, oh my god, I need to keep doing this. Similar to like how people who do drugs might not be happy, and then drugs make them happy for a little bit. It's basically what that is.
Get down! Sir, get down! Sir, get down!
All right, our final one of this bracket is shell shock, and shell shock refers to a historical term used to describe psychological trauma experienced by soldiers during warfare in the First World War and in the Second World War. I can't wait for World War III, by the way. Who here is going to get shell shock? All right, spin the wheel. And what this is it is, symptoms of this are anxiety, emotional dysregulation, nightmares, tremors, fatigue, flashback dissociation, hypervigilance. Symptoms could be acute or chronic depending on exposure. This was, once again first observed during World War I, described soldiers' reactions to bombardment and combat stress. Seeing your buddy get gunned down, that's not going to do a lot of good for your overall psyche. Research has evolved into modern PTSD classification, understanding trauma's neurobiological impact. We are now entering the deep delusion layer of the iceberg.
Are you trying to have sex with me?
Our first topic on this tier of deep delusion is the Madonna Whore Complex. What this is it is a mental health or neuropsychiatric based condition that affects cognition, behavior, or perception of one's own mind. It manifests in diverse and different ways and has a varying severity levels. Symptoms can include presentation of one's self, if you know what I mean, emotional dysregulation, perceptual disturbances, compulsive, erotic, or sexual behavior, or an altered cognition state. And this was first described by Sigmund Freud around the 1912s. And further research, well, there's barely been any research on it since then. It's been brought up a couple of times, but there's not that many documented cases of it. Moving on to schizoid personality disorder. This is a mental health or neuropsychiatric condition that affects cognition, behavior, or perception. It can include emotional dysregulation, perceptual disturbances, compulsive behavior, or an altered cognition as well. And this was originally described in the early 20th century psychiatric literature from the 1910s to 1930s. Schizoid personality disorder it's a form of schizophrenia that affects your personality and how you act and whatnot. So an example of this would basically be someone with schizophrenia who has, multiple different personality types. One that's like cheerful, outgoing, one that's like reserved and angry, one that's like, I don't know, sad and lazy or something like that, different varying wide and vast mental states. Next we have Stockholm Syndrome, and what Stockholm Syndrome is, it's a psychological phenomenon where a hostage of a certain situation develops positive feelings towards their captor that put them in that situation, and this sometimes leads to loyalty or empathy for their captor. Symptoms include unexplained attachment to captors, defending abusers' behavior or crimes, decreased fear despite danger. And the origin or term of this was first used in 1973 following a bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden. And this is basically where the captors kind of took the sides of the bank robber and sympathized with him on a more neurological level.
I have defied gods and demons.
Next we have God complex, and this is an attitude characterized by an inflated self-importance, omnipotence, and a belief in one's infability. Some symptoms include excessive arrogance, disregard for others' opinions, impulsive or controlling behavior, and this emerged in the mid-20th century as clinical slang. And what this is basically is it's someone who thinks that they are God, thinks that they're above everyone else in the room. They think that their self-value is way more than anyone else. Next is histrionic personality disorder, and this is a personality disorder based on involving persuasive attention-seeking behavior and emotional overreaction. Some symptoms include exaggerated emotions, rapid shifting moods, desire to be the center of attention, dramatic impersonal expression. This was first coined in the 1980s, and then earlier psychoanalytic depictions date back to the early and mid 20th century. And these are basically for anyone who will go with like cries wolf on a mental state. They'll say that they have something that they don't have. Like someone could just be sad and they'll be like, I have severe depression. Or if someone is like angry one time, they'll be like, oh my God, I'm a monster, I'm a psychopath, I'm a maniac, I need to be locked up. They'll say something like that. And that's usually an early sign of a histrionic personality disorder.
Did you forget the part of the prophecy where you kill yourself?
Next we have schizotypal personality disorder, not to be confused with the earlier schizophrenic branching disorders. And what this is it's another disorder characterized by an eccentric behavior, unusual beliefs, and social anxiety. Symptoms include odd thinking or speech, perceptual distortions, discomfort in close relationships, eccentric mannerism. And this was once again another thing, it was token coined in 1980. And what it is it's someone who just far-fetched thinking. Like it's similar to God complex, but for example, someone who has schizotypia personality disorder, they'll be just randomly one day someone will click in their head and be like, this water bottle is God, and then they'll start like bowing to it, and they'll convince like their partner or other people to also worship this water bottle. The human brain is crazy. When it suffers enough damage and whatnot, it can really imagine some complicated things. Next we have avoidant personality disorder. This is a personality disorder marked by extreme social inhabilitation and sensitive to negative evaluation. This can be an extreme case of social anxiety or just an irrational fear of being out in public. It's a fear of criticism or rejection, avoidance of social interaction, feelings of inadequacy. Someone who has avoidant personality disorder will literally go to extreme means to not be seen or not to be in a conversation with basically anyone that they do not trust or anyone in general. They do not like interacting with humans. I would say Ted Kaczynski could have been one when he lived in a cabin, but I would probably be wrong. It's just basically like anyone who mammalian group will go with.
Are you so paranoid?
Paranoid personality disorder, similar to avoidant personality disorder, is a long-term pattern of distrust and suspicion towards others without sufficient bias. The symptoms can include reluctance to confide in others, reading hidden threats in Binge weird actions, grudges, and hypersensitivity to basically anything. This was another one observed in 1980 and even in the 60s as well. And this is like if someone who has paranoid personality disorder, let's say you're walking down the street and they're like coming your way. Let's say you blow a gum bubble or something. They'll think that they took that, like literally they took that as like an insult. They'll be like, oh my God, this guy, he's either signaling someone to kill me, or he's like calling me a slur or telling me to, something based in like harassment and whatnot. But, the dude would just, or you would just be, walking normally, chewing gum or something, or just casually on your phone. And, the person with, this disorder, they'd just be like, oh my God, it's Osama bin Laden, or something extreme like that. Next is obsessive compulsive personality disorder, OCPD for short. It's a personality disorder involving preoccupation with order, perfectionism, and control. This is similar to OCD. Symptoms include a rigid adherence to rules, difficulty delegating tasks, like they have a hard time going off of a certain task once they set their mind to it, excessive devotion to work, and inflexibility. And this has been described since the 40s and the 50s. This was looked at as a good thing back then, but since the 70s and 80s, this has been more of a negative character trait. And the good example of this is for anyone who, like how in movies they'll have like the dad or the mom constantly work and like, not care about the kids. That is a good example of obsessive compulsive personality disorder, where they care more about the work than their own flesh and blood and whatnot.
The video might start getting a little weird when we go into the deeper topics here. I'll try to refrain from being a complete schizo.
Our next one is delusional disorder, and this is a psychotic condition in which a person holds firmly to false beliefs despite evidence of the contrary. Liberals. No, not really. Symptoms include persistent, bizarre delusions, minimal impairment outside delusional context, sometimes irritability or argumentativeness. This has been a thing since the 1920s to 1930s. It became a little bit more popular in the last like 10-20 years, and it's more of a political token term now. But back then what it was is people who are just so far wrapped in a mental delusion, they will just hyperfixate on that, and they will separate themselves from reality and whatnot, even though people will be like, this is not real, here's proof. They won't want to read it, they won't want to look at it, they will just keep living in their bubble. And this can be a form of trauma, it can just be a mental state of thinking, a whole wide variety of just grand delusions, basically.
This ain't my dad. This is a cell phone.
We're moving on to agnosia now, or agnesia. What this is it is a neurological disorder in which the brain cannot interpret sensory information despite intact sensory organs. Symptoms include an inability to recognize objects, faces, or sounds, preserve memory and intelligence, difficulty performing daily routine tasks. For people who just over time, it's another form of amnesia or Alzheimer's. It's mostly seen in old adults to the elderly, and it's just basically where they no longer recognize anything. They have a hard time recognizing facial structure because, you watching this video, chin, mouth, nose, eyes, ears, hairline receding. The person who has agnosia, they would be like mouth, ears, eyes, chin, something like that. It would just be flipped, lacking that cognitive processing lobe at the front, or it's been damaged through trauma or something, or just through age. And yeah, that's basically what agnosia is.
You are Redditor. You are a Discord admin.
Next is olfactory reference syndrome. This is kind of a weird one. It's a condition marked by persistent belief that one emits a foul odor despite no evidence. And symptoms include the person having social anxiety, compulsive washing or odor checking, avoidance of social interactions because of this stink that they think they have. And this emerged in the clinical literature in the early 1990s to the late 2000s. And basically what it is it's someone who showers 10 times a day and they're like, I still stink. They think they're like a World of Warcraft player or a Gacha Life player who actually stink, and they just constantly bathe. They'll wash their hands repeatedly. They have like dry skin. Their skin is like water damaged and, soap exfoliated and whatnot from constantly doing their hygiene routines. And they will still think that they stink, and it has been shown that these people can actually smell their odor even though it's not there. It's the brain tricking the sense of smell, one of the back lobes of your brain, and this makes a mental disorder where they will just keep showering and showering and showering, and they'll get this itch if they don't shower because they're just overwhelmed by this this smell, this musk, this odor that is there for them, but other people can't sense it because it's not really there.
I was waking up getting rags in the morning.
Our next one is paraphrenia, and this is a late onset psychotic disorder resembling schizophrenia. It's like schizophrenia's long lost brother, but it comes included with a preserved intellect and affect. So the people who have paraphrenia, they still remain their intellect, and they still, they can still function for the most part. They'll have these delusions, these hallucinations, superstitions, but they maintain relatively intact personally, and they're still daily functioning. This was the term used in the 1910s to 1920s in geriatric psychiatry, and basically this is for like the Chad Schizo people who can still act like normal people, but they be seeing like other stuff, but they don't acknowledge it until it's like a clinical or doctorly setting. Because schizophrenia people, they'll be like, oh my god, it's fucking SpongeBob, when they're like out in public, and everyone will be like, is this guy on crack? People with paraphrenia, they won't be like that. Like, they will see SpongeBob doing like the gritty or something, but they will be like, yes, I know that's not true, and they'll just keep going. They'll do like the I Show Speed, where he like closes his eyes and smiles when they see, instead of like being a soy jack and crashing out, that they're seeing SpongeBob in real life.
Oh, hell no!
Excoriation disorder, and this is a disorder involving repetitive skin picking that results in tissue damage and distress and infections in one's body. Symptoms include compulsive picking, difficulty controlling impulses, shame or embarrassment about skin lesions. And this has been a thing since the Dark Ages, to be honest with you. 1700, or not, way before the 1400s, but it wasn't documented, relatively, or like, yeah, it wasn't documented relatively sound to around the late 18th century, early 19th century, 1910s, 1930s. And it's basically just people who will like pick at their arms, pick at their leg. I'm not showing my foot on screen. Pick at their lips, their fingernails, and you do drugs. And how like homeless people are druggies, so their arms will like be like dug out and whatnot, like they're digging for gold in there or digging for more crack. These people are not influenced by the drug. However, it's more of a mental condition where they're like, I have to, rip out my skin. There's bugs in there and whatnot.
I think they're after me. I think they're gonna kill me. I'm gonna die.
Moving on to persecution complex, and this is a persistent belief that one is being targeted, harmed, or conspired against, even though there is no threat there, but this person doesn't realize it. Symptoms include suspiciousness, defensive behavior, misinterpretation of events or modern day situations as a threatening or hostile behavior, hostility in general, and this has been a thing since the early 19th century. And an example of this would be like how I was talking about earlier, how like, you're walking down the street and someone who has this illness will see you like on your phone or chewing gum, and they'll be like, this guy's out to kill me, and they'll like run away, or they'll be like, police, something like that. Our last one of this bracket is Napoleon complex, and this is a popular or pop culture term describing a perceived overcompensation in individuals of short stature, so like midgets, imps, garden gnomes, and anything that falls between those three categories. Dog is barking. Bastard. Shush! Hi, caramba. Often manifesting as aggressiveness or dominance-seeking behavior. So a little short guy will be like, acknowledge me, acknowledge me. They'll like jump up and down. And you'll have to like look down and be like, is that guy like 2 feet tall? But yeah, symptoms include excessive compulsiveness, dominance, confrontational attitudes, social overcompensation. So like they'll buy like a Lamborghini and then get a booster seat so they can drive in it, or they'll like dress fancy. Like that one dude who played in I don't know what the thing is. He was in Dexter recently. The short actor guy who was like, I should be the only midget in Hollywood. That's basically what Napoleon complex is. I think he has it. He probably doesn't, but we'll have him as an example. whatever his name is. I keep trying to think Lord of the Rings. It's not Lord of the Rings. It's the other show. It was like a TV show with dragons in it. I forget, bro. Starting off with the really crazy ones here. This is the second to last tier list, so stuff's gonna get a little wacky. So, our first one is fatal familial insomnia, rare genetic prion disease that causes progressive insomnia, cognitive decline, and ultimately death in a person or family. This is a homogeneous gene that is a protein in the brain that basically allows you to sleep. People with this familial insomnia, it is a family pattern where basically they will die because the prion in the brain just doesn't work anymore, or the protein. So you don't know how to sleep anymore, your brain can't go to sleep, and you just tire yourself out and you die of exhaustion. Symptoms include severe sleep loss, hallucinations, confusion, loss of coordination, and rapid deterioration of mental and physical health. This was first described in 1986 by Elio Lugresi and colleagues in Italy, and it was linked to mutations in the PRNP gene, which is a brain protein that I've talked about. Capgras delusion. Oh, this one is fun. I hope this isn't like this isn't meant to seem racial. It's meant to seem like basically Capgras's delusion, or at least the album cover. And what Capgras's delusion is, it's a delusion, a misidentification disorder in which a person believes someone close to them has been replaced by an imposter. Symptoms include intense suspicion towards familiar people, emotional detachment, and strong beliefs in duplication, despite contrary evidence, despite them being like, you know, here's evidence why you're proven wrong. And this was first described in 1923 by Joseph Capgras himself, who was a French psychiatrist. And basically Capgras's delusion, it can just kind of happen like out of the blue. You know, you just be chilling there, and then if you have Capgras's delusion, it just, you know, snaps and be like, that family member of mine is no longer my family member. I hold resentment now. You know, what did you do with the, you know, the actual person? Even though that person would just be like, you know, what are you talking about, bro? And then, you know, that's like a minimal scale. And the worst scale is someone with Capgras's delusion would actually go out of their way to kill this believed supposed imposter. I hope my neighbor doesn't see my window's open. All it takes is for him to like look up, and then he sees me like this. Be like, I am normal. Next, we have alien hand syndrome, and this is a neurological disorder where one hand acts independently, performing actions without conscious control. Symptoms include involuntarily grasping, self-directed movements, and conflict between hands. This was first identified in 1908 by a neurologist, Kurt Goldstein. The term alien hand syndrome was later popularized in the 1970s with sci-fi horror and whatnot. And what it is, as an example, like let's take my hand here. I would lose motor control, I'd lose functions in my hand, and it would just act, you know, like sporadically on its own. And I'd be like, oh, it's alive. And Folie et Deux is our next topic. It's French, so I'm going to butcher it. And what it is it's a shared psychotic disorder where delusional beliefs are transmitted from one person to another. Symptoms include shared hallucinations or delusions, dependency between individuals, and distorted perception of reality. This was first described by French psychiatrist Charles Lejeune and Jean-Pierre Fellerot in 1877, so this has been around for a while. And what this is if one person is crazy, then they can basically transmit it to another person who will also believe in that grand delusion. And this is kind of how like public hysteria happens and whatnot. Folie et Deux, the French thing, that's probably the leading benefactor behind, you know, just mass hysteria in history. Next, we have Lima syndrome, and Lima syndrome is a psychological condition in which captors develop sympathy or emotion attachment towards their hostages. This is the opposite of Stockholm syndrome, and basically what the symptoms are is it's compassion towards a victim, guilt, decreased aggression, and attempts to confront or help captives that person has put into that situation. This was named after the 1996 hostage crisis at a Japanese embassy in Lima, Peru. in which the captor or the person who put everyone in the hostage situation was like, I kind of feel bad now, but apparently that's a mental disorder. Next is Schizoaffective, probably butchered that one as well, and this is a delusional disorder where a person denies ownership of a limb or side of their body, similar to alien hand syndrome. Symptoms include denial of limb ownership, attribution of the limb to someone else, confusion, and emotional detachment. And this was first described by a Gernsman in the 1940s, and it was studied further in the 1980s in neuropsychology. So what this is once again, if I have someone tryptophan, this is my arm. This isn't my arm. I don't know what you guys are. This isn't my arm. You know. I don't know. You guys are crazy. I'm not crazy. This isn't my arm. Next we have Oedipus complex, and this is a psychoanalytic concept describing a child's unconscious sexual desire for the opposite sex parent and rivalry with the same-sex parent. This one was made by Freaky Freud. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I don't believe in this at all. This is just disgusting. Mr. Freud might have been into children, who knows? But it's basically, as an example, a little boy, wants to breed with his mother, so he will have to fight his father for his wife, aka the kid's mother. That's all that is. I'm not going to spend any time on that. Not a big fan of it. I personally don't believe in it. Rumination syndrome. This one's funny. I will spend a little bit of time on this one. This is a gastrointestinal and behavioral disorder involving the repeated regurgitation and rechewing of food. This wasn't the one I was thinking of, never mind. And basically what this is, it's effortless regurgitation, re-swallowing, abdominal discomfort, and social embarrassment. This was first documented in medical literature in the 17th century, and it was formally recognized in modern medicine in the late 20th century. And this basically, someone would be eating and they would just puke, but they wouldn't force themselves to puke. They would just come out of the blue and just, they would even feel it until they saw it, quite literally shooting out of their mouth. That's what rumination syndrome is.
She said she was 12.
Erotomania is a delusional disorder in which an individual believes another person, often of higher status, is in love with them. Symptoms include persistent romantic delusions, obsessive communication attempts, stalking, and emotional dependency. And this was first described by, once again, another French person, a French psychiatrist, Gaëtan Gatien de Clermont in 1921. Probably butchered that name. Oh well. And an example of this is, one of the gym bros be like a dude being like, damn, that female officer is hot, which could be, Zootopia. Anyways, Officer Hobbs. Oh my god. But he'd be like, damn, girl, you smoking. And he's only really in love with that woman because she has a higher authority than him. And this could be vice versa. This could be a girl in love with a military general or something. And that's basically what erotomania is. It is a lust for someone based on power and dominance, and this could be like a BDSM thing, but it is described more as a mental grand delusion than anything. Alice in Wonderland syndrome is a perceptual disorder causing distortions in body image, size, and spatial relationships. Symptoms include objects appearing larger or smaller than they are, altered time perception, and visual disorientation. And this was named by British psychiatrist John Todd in 1955, inspired by, the novel by Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. And what this is a person will think that their hand is magically growing. That time has stopped. Our next one is Anton Babinski syndrome, and this is a rare neurological condition in which blind individuals deny their blindness and may, confabulate or basically create a visual experience in one's own mind. Symptoms include denial of vision loss, false visual deceptions, and damage to the occipital lobe. And this was first described in 1899 by neurologists Gabriel Anton and Joseph Babinski. And what this is if a person has recently become blind, their brain may cope and be like, no, we're not blind, we can still see. And what they'll do is they will gather past events and memories from their brain, and they will try and, part that together to make it seem like it's seemingly that they can still see something. So they'll be like, how many fingers am I holding up? And that person will cope, even though they're blind, they can't actually see the person. So they'll just paint an image in their head, a hyper-realistic image that, looks you know, it's indistinguishable from real life in their own mind. And they'll be like, oh, I don't know, 4 fingers, and then, you know, they have a 1 in 5 chance of being correct. But if the person says, no, I'm actually holding up 2, you're blind, they'll be like, no, that's a lie. They'll cope to themselves, the brain will cope, and no amount of, you know, reverse thinking and whatnot will cure this person from this, and this is kind of a permanent thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing to have compared to all the other ones on the list, but it is a uncurable one. Next one is Charles Bonnet syndrome, and this is a visual hallucination disorder occurring in people with significant vision loss, but intact cognition. And this is similar to the last one I just covered, and this is a complex visual hallucinations, awareness that the images are not real, and no other psychotic symptoms. And this was first described by the Swiss philosopher Charles Bonnet in 1760. This is similar to Anton Babinski syndrome. However, this one, the person knows that they're blind, but they are still coping, and they still can paint like a vivid, you know, image of their mind of their everyday surroundings and whatnot from past experiences and memories. But the person is not crazy, and you can even be like, yeah, you're actually blind, and they'll be like, yeah, bro, I know, but, you know, let me have this. Next one is a reduplicative. I don't know this word. I'm gonna be real with you. Parmesan. So it's a delusional misidentification syndrome where a person believes a familiar place has been duplicated or relocated. And symptoms include confusion about location, false recognition, and persistent beliefs in spatial duplication. This was first documented by neurologist Arnold Pick in 1902 and 1903. This has been a topic of study. I know it was very popular back in the 1960s and 1970s, especially around like the time of Vietnam, leading to the Cold War and whatnot. But what this is it's a person who thinks that Paris is in France, you know, and this person would think that Paris is in Italy or something, and they will be like, you know, it must have been duplicated. They must have copied Paris in Italy, and they put Paris in France, but Paris is still in Italy. And that person won't believe you if you show them, look, it was never there to begin with, and it's always been there. They'll be like, oh, not true. So they'll think that it got duplicated or removed or moved, if that makes sense. But, you know, you can't move an entire city. Next one is subjective doubles, and this is a rare delusional misidentification syndrome where an individual believes duplicates of themselves exist in the world, whether this is your evil twin, whether this is the twin that you need to start digging in your butt with, or if this is just, you know, you imagine yourself in another place, but you fully believe and you fully cope and commit to it. Symptoms include belief in identical doubles, dissociation, and identity confusion. You might get confused with your evil twin. You might do an evil act, you know, supervillain act. You might paint your face red and put a black stripe on your face. Not because you're crazy, but because you actually have. This was first described in 1937 by the psychiatrist Joseph Kerbin. And yeah, it's basically just someone believes that there's an evil twin of themselves, and it may be out to get them, or it may not be out to get them, and it just may be existing in another place, you know, in the world at a time. And this person may even try to visit this fabricated duplicate of themselves, and it will just lead to the dog basically chasing a tail that is not there. So they will just go in circles and circles and circles. Our next one is mirrored self-misidentification, and this is the delusion condition in which individuals believe their reflection in the mirror is another person. So you can literally hold a mirror up to someone and they'll be like, damn, how you doing? You're like, oh, they're waving at me, yeah? How was your day? You know, and they just have a full-on conversation with themselves in the mirror. Kind of crazy, I know. This might be a little off-branching of schizophrenia or even Alzheimer's disease, possibly. But what this basically is, the symptoms, misidentifying reflections, confusion, paranoia, and a lack of self-recognition. And this was a neuropsychiatric literature term in the late 20th century, 1980s, 1990s. Our next one is akinetic mutism, and this is a neurological disorder characterized by an absence of voluntary movement and speech despite wakefulness. Symptoms include a lack of initiative, minimal speech, preserved eye movement, and apparent alertness. This was first described by Kars et al. In 1941 following brain injury studies, and this is basically anyone who has a cognitive disease or a brain injury. They think that they're a puppet or a mind, that something else is controlling them, so they will just act in a stale position, a refrigerated position, where they won't move. They'll be in a docile state, and they might have, like, you know, They might start moving like a marionette. Not really though, but they'll start like moving and whatnot, and they won't think of themselves as a person, more so as an object being controlled by a higher power or higher being. Catatonia is similar to this one that we just covered, and catatonia is a neuropsychiatric syndrome involving motor immobility, mutism, and abnormal posturing. Symptoms include stupor, rigidity, roughness and movement and whatnot, a waxy flexibility, echolalia, and overall withdrawal from life. This was first identified by Carls Ludwig and Kalbaum in 1874, so this thing has been around for a while, and it is just basically the same thing as akinetic mutism, where these people will just freeze up one day and not move, but they'll be fully aware of it. It's like you're in a waking coma. That's basically what catatonia is. Our final one on this thing before we plunge to the final area, and I absolutely lose my mind, is Jonah complex. This is a term used to describe the fear of one's own greatness or success, leading to self-sabotage. Symptoms include procrastination, avoidance of success, guilt about ambition, and self-doubt. Now, the history of this, it was coined by psychologist Abraham Maslow in the 1960s. And what this is it's someone who will purposely self-sabotage themselves so they will not get popular or they will not, develop something. So a dude who has Jonah complex, he could, let's say I'm inventing a water bottle that can float, ooh, magic. If I have Jonah complex, then I'll be like, destroy it all, and I'll like burn all the evidence, and I'll destroy the project and whatnot, because I have a irrational fear of validation, because I think getting validation will lead to my untimely doom. That's what these people with the Jonah complex believe. Our first one on the final tier list is cancer syndrome. This was in 1898. Now, its description is defined as being a rare dissociative disorder characterized by giving approximate or nonsensical answers to simple questions, often called Vorbeerdian. It is sometimes associated with extreme stress trauma or imprisonment. Symptoms can include clouded consciousness, pseudomorphine, confusion, and giving incorrect but close answers. It can also involve hallucinations and conversion symptoms. History and origins of this, like previously stated, it was in 1898, and this was defined by German psychiatrist Sigbert Ganser after observing the condition in prisoners. The next one is my personal favorite. This is Cotard syndrome. This is from the 1880s. Cotard syndrome, also known as the walking corpse syndrome, is a rare neuropsychiatric disorder where the affected person believes they are dead, does not exist, or have lost their internal organs or blood. Basically a dried husk, as if they, who knows how they're walking if they think they have no blood or organs in their system. Symptoms include persistent nihilistic delusions, depression, depersonalization, and refusal to eat or care for oneself due to perceived non-existence or godlike state. The origin of this was named after a French neurologist, Julius Cotard, who first described it in 1880 in a patient who believed she had no brain, no nerves, no chest, no stomach. A hollow vessel. Next one is the Fregoli delusion. The Fregoli delusion is a delusional misidentification disorder where individuals believe that different people are actually one person who changes appearance or disguises themselves. Symptoms can include a paranoid delusion of anxiety, persistent belief in persecution by a single shape-shifting person. This was first described in 1927 by Curvin and Phil, named after Italian actor Leopold Fregoli, known for his rapid costume changes. Like a shapeshifter or something, like the spy from TF2. It can be maybe even face swapping, body swapping, but you will think a different person is someone else entirely. And this can go to an extreme thing where you'll actually start hunting down someone who isn't the person you thought it was, but you'll still follow through with it. Or just minor circumstances where it's all like, yeah, that person's my friend, even though it's just some, random dude off the street, and it'll be like, get away from me, you freak.
Oh, I won't let you go.
Next is the delusional paratosis. This was made in 1894, discovered in 1894, I should say. And delusional paratosis is a somatic delusional disorder in which individuals believe they are infested with parasites or insects despite no medical evidence. I talked about this earlier. Start digging in your skin, twin. There's bugs in there. Get them out. There's bugs in your skin, or rip off your skin. There's bugs in your skin, or rip off your skin. Symptoms include persistent itching, skin picking, anxiety, infections from the skin, formation of lesions due to self-inflicted scratching, and this was first documented by the French physician George Thurbridge and Henry Perrien, where they would see patients just, you know, start opening up their arms and their legs, and they think they got bugs in there.
I'm Jesus Christ Almighty! No! Nobody else needs to die.
You are under arrest. Put your hands behind your back now.
No, I'm not.
Now, yes you are. You're gonna get tased.
Next is the Jerusalem syndrome, and this is a term coined in the late 1980s to early 1990s, and it's basically a religious-themed psychotic disorder triggered by visiting the city of Jerusalem in Israel, and this leads to individuals to believe they are biblical or Sinaitic figures. There's a fucking plane going on over my house, so if the audio is bad, okay, I think that fixed the audio. That's a bit annoying. But yeah, The Simpsons did something similar to Jerusalem syndrome, where they had like Homer Simpson think he's like the Messiah because he went to Jerusalem on a school field trip with Bart or something. If you know what episode I'm talking about, yeah. Next one is the Messiah complex. This is from the early 1900s. The Messiah complex refers to an individual's belief that they are destined to save humanity or have a divine mission, often linked with narcissistic or grandiose delusions. Symptoms include an exaggerated self-importance, kind of like a God syndrome, or what we talked about earlier, people who value themselves higher in the room. Delusions of grandeur, hyper-religious activity, basically religious fanatics, religious hermits, and a disregard for opposing views. If you disagree with this person, you are the Antichrist to them, metaphorically. Metamorphosis. This was discovered in 1932, and what it is it's basically a delusional misidentification syndrome where a person believes others have exchanged identities with each other while maintaining the same appearance. Symptoms include confusion about identity, paranoia, and perceptual distortions involving recognition of others. This was first described by Kerbin and Tourette, I believe I'm saying his name right, as part of the broader group of misidentification syndrome. So what this is a person thinks that two people have swapped bodies on them. Person A and person B. Person A is now person B. Person B is now person A. That's what that person believes, that psychiatric illness that they have. Next is the Stendhal syndrome. This was in 1979, and this is another psychosomatic condition involving rapid heartbeats, dizziness, fainting, or hallucinations when exposed to overwhelming art or beauty. Now, this can be described as anxiety, confusion, heart palpitations, and temporary depersonalization triggered by sensory overload. If you see a good painting, or you see like furry vor art on E621 and you just like freeze up, it's not out of fear, it's out of just sheer beauty for that topic. Yeah, this was named after the French writer Stendhal, who described the phenomenon in 1817, and it was later recognized medically by Italian psychiatrists Graziel Mengarini in 1979. So it basically took them well over 100 years to be like, maybe this guy actually is talking about something that's linked to the brain and whatnot. Next is Diogenes syndrome. This is characterized by extreme self-neglect, social withdrawal, and compulsive hoarding. My water bottle collection, quite literally, I have to get rid of that. Symptoms include poor hygiene, neglect of living environment, accumulation of waste, and a lack of shame or concern for condition. This was named after the ancient Greek philosopher Diogenes of Sinope, or Sinopo. My brain fried, bro. Too much words. The syndrome was first described in medical literature in 1966 by Clark and colleagues.
How good it feels for you to be a dumb, horny cow.
Next, we have boanthropy, and this was ancient to the 19th century. And what it is it is a rare psychological disorder in which a person believes they are a cow or ox and behaves accordingly. So you'll see some random ass dude start eating grass and he thinks he's a cow and start mooing. He won't respond to, any language, any human language, so you have to like moo back at him, and then now you have a subculture of people who think they're cows and whatnot, basically the cow sissy hypnosis on YouTube. I think that's what created all of this. Symptoms include crawling on all fours, eating grass, or imitating bovine behavior. The earliest reference is found in the biblical story of Nebuchadnezzar II and the Book of Daniel. And then modern documentation emerged in the 19th century through psychiatric case studies. Next, we have mental illness in animals. Mental illness in animals refers to the exhibition of behavioral and emotional disorders in non-human species similar to human psychiatric conditions. These include depression, anxiety, OCD behaviors, and PTSD. Symptoms include for these animals self-harming repetitive behaviors like pacing or feather plucking, and avian species. Aggravation or withdrawal often caused by trauma or captivity. So psychosis is, one of those. And the history and origin of this, the concept began emerging in the 1800s when Charles Darwin and later animal behaviorists noted psychological distress in animals. Modern veterinary psychiatric development significantly increased this and made this more popular in the late 20th century. Next, we have the Phaedra complex, and this is a psychological pattern where an older woman develops romantic or sexual feelings towards a younger man, often her stepson or someone in a similar position of dependency. Basically, anyone who's played Persona, you know what I'm talking about. Symptoms include obsessive affection, jealousy, guilt, and emotional conflicts leading to depression or destructive behavior. This was named after the Greek mythological figure Phaedra, who fell in love with her stepson, Hippolytos. The term was popularized in psychoanalytic discussions during the mid-20th century. Another gross one. Next, we have Truman Syndrome. And Truman Syndrome is a delusional belief in which a person thinks their life is a reality TV show or that they are constantly being watched and broadcasted. Symptoms include paranoia, hyper-awareness of surroundings, anxiety, and a distorted sense of reality tied to media influence. And this was basically coined after the 1998 film The Truman Show, and is first medically described by psychiatrists Joe and Ian Gold in 2007/2008.
I want to show you all how to really do it. Here it goes.
Next, we have clinical lycanthropy, which is, it was first discovered in the medieval times, and it's even around in the modern era. And what this is it's a rare psychiatric condition where an individual believes they can transform into a wolf or other animal. As you can see, the beast inside of me, those TikToks. Symptoms include hallucinations, delusional misidentification, animalistic behaviors, and a strong identification with predatory traits. This was referenced in medieval European witch trials and folklore. The first clinical documentation of this appeared in the 19th century in psychiatric based texts. And an example of this, this has led to some people cannibalizing other people because they think they are a werewolf or something from medieval folklore. And that's basically what clinical lycanthropy is. Next, we have autophagia, and autophagia is a psychological disorder characterized by the compulsion to bite, chew, or consume parts of one's own body. Symptoms include self-mutilation, biting of lips, fingers, or other body parts, often linked to anxiety, psychosis, or impulse control disorders. This is a distinct psychiatric phenomenon in the 20th century. It's primarily discussed in relation to self-harm and obsessive-compulsive spectrum disorders. So this is new to our society, kind of, or at least it's newly well documented. And it's basically anyone who is anxious, they chew their fingernails, they start biting more of their finger. They might dig into their skin, they might rip out some hair, stuff like that. That basically all falls under autophagia. Next we have Renfield syndrome, which is known as the vampire delusion. It's a psychotic condition where individuals believe they must consume blood to survive or gain vitality. This was popularized in the 1970s with Dracula and whatnot, and it's an obsession with blood, self-harming or harm to others, identity disturbances, and delusions of immortality, and it was named after the fictional character Renfield and Dracula by Bram Stoker in 1897, and the psychiatric term didn't emerge until the late 1970s. And what this is it's a person who basically thinks they're a vampire, so they will like bite people and drink their blood because it makes them think that they're going to be immortal and whatnot. These people are freaks, and they probably have every like human blood-based illness known to man. They probably have like mega super gay AIDS. And next we have Kluver-Bucy syndrome. This was founded in 1939, and it is a syndrome in which a neurobehavioral disorder resulting from bilateral damage to the temporal lobes, including the amygdala. And what this causes is it causes a hyperroyalty, which is putting objects in the mouth, similar to Pica and whatnot that was talked about. However, it is more of a hypersexual take where there's emotional blunting, hypersexuality, and the loss of fear response. This was discovered by Henrik Kluver and Paul Bucy after experimenting on reuse monkeys that involve temporal lobe removal. So if you remove someone's lobe, their frontal lobe, they'll become more sexual. Any dudes out there whose wife has lost the spark over the years, you know, just give her a little ice pick through the frontal lobe. She'll be good to go.
Doing in here?
I'm just familiarizing myself with, you know, the vegetables and such.
Get out. One can get too familiar with vegetables, you know.
Next is body integrity dysmorphia, and this is also known as body integrity identity disorder, BIID. This condition involves a persistent desire to amputate a healthy limb or become disabled to align with one's self-image or kink. Symptoms include intense discomfort with one's own body, anxiety, depression, and fixation on amputation or paralysis. This was described in the late 20th century, which increased recognitions in the 1990s through case studies, news reports, and neurological research linking it to parental lobe dysfunctions. Second to last, we have anthropophobia, which was founded in the early 1900s. And anthropophobia is also called social phobia or fear of people. It's basically people at the most extreme thing that are socially uncomfortable interacting with anyone. They are deathly afraid of people. They will literally run away and hide in inclusivity, and they will attack anyone that goes near them. It's an anxiety disorder characterized by an extreme fear of social interactions or being judged by others. Panic attacks, trembling, avoidance of crowds, blushing, and difficulty speaking in public. This was recognized in Japanese psychiatry in the early 1900s. And is later classified globally under anxiety disorders. However, this is probably the most extreme anxiety disorder, that being anthropophobia, where it's someone is so anxious they don't want to see people that they will literally go out of their way to harm those people so they never see them again. Our final one is martyr complex, and martyr complex describes a psychological pattern where individuals seek suffering or percussion to feel morally superior or to gain sympathy and validation. Symptoms include self-sacrificing behavior, guilt-driven decisions, resentment when unacknowledged, and manipulation through self-victimization, basically the boy who cried wolf. This term appeared in the mid-20th century psychoanalytic literature, building on Christian martyr archetypes and Christian folklore, and modern theories of codependency and whatnot. Okay, that being said, that's going to do it for this iceberg tier list on all the known mental disorders.